It's Nix. If my pen will work. ASMR. Welcome back to another video. Tonight I have with me the FAR-AIM, or part of the 14th Code of Federal Regulations, which govern air travel in the United States. And I want to look at and teach you some acronyms. I'm just going to go through this list alphabetically. And if you're using this to study for maybe your private pilot written, or maybe learn a thing or two about aviation, or just to listen to the sound of my voice, welcome. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the first acronym. I think the first one I'm going to go with is, because of its recent significance, ADSB. Now, ADSB stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. I'm not going to get too in depth with any of these, but one cool thing that ADSB allows pilots to do now is see each other on your iPad if you have the correct equipment. But you can just see each other now right on your map display, which makes it a whole lot safer. Next up, we have AFB. Now, AFB stands for Air Force Base. And if you're looking for a place to land or do some practice, precision approaches, PARs, or surveillance approaches, which are two types of approaches that pilots use mainly only in the military. Look for an airport that ends in Air Force Base, and there's a slightly higher likelihood that they'll have one. Next, let's go with AGL. This one is very important. It's used all of the time, and it is pretty important for safety to not confuse altitudes above ground level with mean sea level, which are two completely different altitudes most of the time. But above ground level means your literal height. If this is the ground and this is you in your little airplane, the height from here to here is your height. AGL. Or as opposed to maybe you're on a mountain and this is the ocean. This is the height. Well, okay, of course I basically just made that the same. But I do kind of want to actually explain this concept. You're on a plateau and this is the ocean down here. If the average of the ocean is here, this is your altitude. MSL, or mean sea level. So AGL depends on the terrain, and MSL is always the average of the sea level, which can be a little bit confusing, but it's okay. We'll move on. I digress. Let's go with something interesting. I'll go with ALS. And this is not the disease ALS. This is the approach lighting system. ALS is basically just an acronym for any of the approach lights you might find coming up to a runway. Say the runway is here. It's runway. Nope. We're going to do this accurately. We're going to go runway 1. It could be 362. Whatever. I'll explain that in another video. There's normally some lights here flashing and some lights going this way that kind of, they're sequenced. They're called SFLs. There's lights over here. There's lights over here. Basically, approach lighting systems just help the pilot see where the runway is. Basically, if it's low visibility or at night, you can get lined up with the runway for all intents and purposes. And next, let's go with AP. If you are a watch lover or watch collector, this is not the watch brand. Speaking of which, I do have an aviator's watch on today. This is the Citizen Nighthawk, which has a rotating bezel, which allow you to do different fuel calculations and rate of climb calculations, conversions, etc. But AP in aviation stands for autopilot. 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 Not like a Tesla. Tesla autopilot is arguably better in some ways. Let's go ahead and erase these, and we can get on to the next ones. So next up, let's pick A. T. You may already be familiar. C. ATC stands for Air Traffic Control, and it's special to me because I was an air traffic controller. They are not the guys standing on the, I can't even say it, tarmac. I'm never saying that again. It's called a ramp. Stop saying tarmac. Air traffic controllers are the guys in the towers Yeah, you know what? We'll go with that. Air traffic controllers are the guys in the towers that are looking out at you and keeping the runways. For any of you that are in aviation, this is obviously a simplified version. But they're looking out of the tower with their little binoculars. And I don't know why I'm trying to be so accurate with this stupid runway. And they control all of the taxiways. So say here's the terminal, or the ramp where all the planes are parked, and there's some taxiways here, and there's one that goes off this way for this runway over here, and there's a taxiway that connects there. Anyway, those are the guys controlling all the planes and vehicles on the ground, as well as clearing planes to take off and land. And then their services extend beyond the tower. More acronyms, but we call it TRACON or ARTEC or ARTSY if you're weird. But those are different types of air traffic control facilities that are making sure your plane is safe by using radar when you're en route. Next up, we have, let's actually change this from air traffic control to air traffic control specialist, which is just the official name for an air traffic controller, since a lot of people are already familiar with ATC. Next, let's go with AWOS, or Automated Weather Observation System. Now, AWOS is exactly what it sounds like. At airports, generally uncontrolled, meaning there is no control tower, so not any big international airports or anything. But there's an automated weather system that pretty much just shoots a laser up into the sky, takes readings about the clouds. It may have a precipitation collector, windsock, but it can read barometric pressure. It just tells pilots what the weather is at the airport that they are flying into or out of. Next, let's go for, I guess we should get we'll get a B in here. There's not a whole lot of B acronyms. Let's go with B, E, C, M, G. This is a becoming group. I didn't know it was called a becoming group until just now. I just read it as becoming. But in a TAF, or Terminal Aerodrome Forecast, basically just the predicted weather, the outlook. This is saying that the weather at a certain time is becoming something else. So, the wind could be calm, and then at 9 o'clock Zulu or military time, which actually on this watch is shown by this little white airplane, so showing that it's 9 o'clock Zulu. Excuse this car. So I don't really know where I left, but the weather's becoming something different. On to the C's. Let's go. This one's actually not from the pilot controller glossary. Hello. Okay, now I don't know what's happening. Let's find out together, shall we? It would be just as... What? Is the color white? Okay, somehow the color got switched to white. Interesting. Sure, we'll go with that. It would be just as easy to edit that part out, but let's be transparent, that was a fun adventure. The appendix 3 of the AIM has CD listed as controller display, but I'm actually going to turn it into another controller acronym, CD for clearance delivery. Clearance delivery, clearance delivery, clearance delivery. Clearance delivery is the air traffic controller that is basically approving the route of flight and reading that to the pilot and giving them some key information for their departure. And please excuse the interruption. A truck started right outside. So, we were somewhere. CD, clearance delivery. I'll give you an example of an air traffic control clearance that I'm just making up. This, if you are a pilot, is not necessarily a real route. But Delta 2193, you are cleared to the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport via the Bob Z2 departure, Bob Z transition, then as filed. On departure, maintain 4,000, expect flight level 270 within 10 nautical miles of departure. Departure frequency 134.42, squawk 0653. We can go into all of that in another video if you want. I'd like to have an aviation series, but we'll see if there is interest in it. Let me know in the comments below. Next, let's go for, this is actually pretty cool that it even exists, and it makes things a whole lot easier. It's a luxury we did not have as Navy air traffic controllers, but it's CPDLC. I also don't have this luxury in the small planes that I fly. CPDLC stands for, now let me make sure I get this right, Controller Pilot Data Link Communications. Controller Pilot Data Link Communications. Essentially, it's messaging between, like text messaging basically, between pilots of commercial airliners and air traffic control. And it makes it way easier to send amended flight plans or just random bits of information. If you're flying oceanic or over the ocean, I think it goes through CPDLC. It may get weird when you start to introduce oceanic flights, but you can send things like radio frequencies and whatever. Anyway, you can literally just type out whatever message you want, and it has a bunch of other features, but that's the simplified version. And then let's go for CTAF. A lot of pilots don't even know the difference between CTAF and all of the other frequencies that are found at uncontrolled fields. Sometimes the CTAF controls the PCL, sometimes the PCLs aren't controlled by the CTAF, sometimes there are no PCLs, sometimes there's a whole lot of acronyms that you have no idea what they mean, because aviation gets very confusing. But CTAF stands for Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, and it's a frequency that you go on when you're landing at an airport that has no air traffic controllers. Basically, it's a big group chat for pilots, a voice chat, like a Discord. You get on there, you say what you're doing, and hope that nobody crashes into you. That's, sounds stupid, but that's pretty much how that works. Let's erase this page here. Okay, so let's get into the next letter of the alphabet, D as in Delta. Let's go with an airport identifier for this one. DCA, or the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. This is kind of cheating because the airport identifier is really KDCA, which is the ICAO, or International Civil Aviation Organization. I told you, aviation has a lot of acronyms. But the K basically just means the continental United States. Yes, we're all aware continental does not start with a K, but C is for Canada, okay? So K is the next best thing for contiguous or continental. DCA is the Reagan Airport. Great. Let's go kind of an interesting one. I don't know, maybe you would use this in a report. I'm not sure when you would actually use this acronym, but DER is the departure end of the runway. Basically, if this is your runway, you take off and land, generally speaking, in the same direction. So this is runway 36 going this way. This would be runway 18 going this way. It's based off of magnetic heading, by the way. So 36 is 360 degrees-ish. Moving on. So say you want to take off into the wind too, by the way. So if we've got a nice 360 at 10 wind, or it's coming from the north, 360 degrees at 10 knots, we're going to take off runway 36. So this is the approach end of the runway, because it is the end where all the aircraft are making their approach to land. And then this is the DER, I guess. I guess this is APR, approach end of runway. Is it on here? ASR. Oh, ASR. I can't believe I didn't do that. I like ASR. AP. Okay, so there's no approach end of runway acronym, or if there is, it's not APR. But this is the end of the runway you're departing from, so it is, of course, the departure end. Interesting acronym. I didn't really know it needed to be an acronym. We all just say the departure end of the runway. But you learn something new every day. If you haven't learned by now, the U.S. government makes everything way more complicated than it really needs to be. Let's flip a page here and see what else we got in the Delta section. Like DME. Now DME stands for distance measuring equipment. It is the equipment that's built into some means of radio navigation, like a VOR or a variable omnidirectional range, which is just using radios for navigation. But a DME, by using wavelength, can determine how far away you are from the thing you're navigating to, or the VOR, in most cases. There's standard DME and precision DME, which is just DME/N or /P. Next up, we have DoD, which many of you are likely familiar with, the Department of Defense. DoD is kind of important in aviation. Of course, there's DoD missions, military missions. There's DoD airspace, that's controlled by the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense is mentioned multiple times throughout regulation when looking into restricted and controlled airspaces, or special use airspaces, I should say. There's SUAs, again, another acronym. So DoD is generally pretty important, but most of the time think military when we're thinking DoD. Next we have DP, which is departure procedure, or an instrument departure procedure. Basically, it's just a set procedure of climbs and turns and instructions to get you, I don't know, say you need to go here, and here's the runway. The procedure may have you take off and climb to 3,000. Then maybe there's a mountain straight off the runway, so it has you turn to the right on a heading of 040, and then you turn left as you're climbing. Anyway, basically it alleviates an air traffic controller from having to say climb to this, turn right to this, turn left to that. It's an automatic procedure. If you go back to the clearance delivery acronym, in my example I said you're cleared to the Atlanta Archer-Jackson Airport via the Bob Z2 departure. In this case, I think that's a departure from Charlotte International, if I'm not mistaken. BOBZY2, and it may be the Bob Z3, 4, or 5 by now. They update. That is an example of a departure procedure. So let's do a couple of E for echo, and then we will call it a night. We have some to go, so no fear and no need to go anywhere. But I hope you found this relaxing, informational, or whatever you seek to find in this video. I truly hope that you find it with me. In the E for echo section, we'll start off with edict, or estimated departure clearance time. Sometimes when you're taking off, you can't take off right away, and they'll give you, or your route can't be cleared right away. They'll give you an edict time, they meaning air traffic control, and this is your expected departure clearance time. Just what it says. Next, let's go with pretty important ELT. An ELT is an emergency locator transmitter. ELTs, if you want to think of it, well, I mean, they really are. They are a tiny little black box. By tiny, I mean they're about this big, called the size of my iPad, a little skinnier, maybe. This is a side profile. And this would be like a practice ELT with the antenna like this. Really, the box would be somewhere in the plane, and the antenna would be routed out to the top or bottom of the fuselage of the plane, or both. But the ELT, emergency locator transmitter, sends a a frequency, a message out. The older ones on 121.5 just send out a radio wave, and you have to go find it with these search and rescue teams will use elpers. An old version that used in Civil Air Patrol is literally just a meter stick with some antennas strapped to the side of it and a little box. And basically, you rotate around until you receive the greatest indication of the needle. I don't know what kind of needle looks like that. A clock, I guess. And so say you get your greatest indication when you are facing this way. That means that the ELT is either directly in front of you or directly behind you. Because of course, it can't be easy. So what happens then? Well, you go on your map and you say, all right, we're here, which I'm going to have to make a little bit more obvious. And the ELT is either this way or that way. Now what do? Well, now you move over here. Now where's it reading? It's either going this way or that way. So now the ELT is somewhere over here. And it looks like, oh, perfect, X marks the spot. It's right there. Well, there's a lot of factors that affect this whole equipment, so you want to get a couple of readings. This one is never going to go right there. I'm telling you. 99% of the time, that next reading you take is going to do something like this. And then you take one from here and it does something like this. And then you take one from here and it does something like this. But you're narrowing down your search area, and now you know it's not behind you. That is where the ELT is located. If you are a hiker or survivalist outdoorsman, you may have heard of a PLB, or personal locator beacon, which is basically just a version of this for hikers or anybody who boats have their own versions, etc. Anyway, next let's go two pretty important ones. I'm going to do them reverse alphabetical because they make sense chronologically. ETD is your estimated time of departure. It's exactly what it sounds like, and it goes along with your ETA, or your estimated time of arrival. Now you have an ETD and an ETA before your flight, right? Well, after you take off, you still have an ETA, but your ETD goes away. Well, I mean, on your Delta app, it still says, that was your estimated time, and, if your flight was early or late out of the gate. But now you have an ATD, or an actual time of departure. Same when you arrive, you have an actual time of arrival. So you have your estimated time of departure, estimated time of arrival, actual time of departure, actual time of arrival, not to be confused with your estimated time en route or your actual time en route or your expected departure clearance time. I told you aviation is crazy with its acronyms. So, with my stomach growling, I think I'm gonna go have a Hawaiian pizza. But let me know if you would be interested in learning any more acronyms or anything from the pilot controller glossary, more aviation related content in general. There's clearly lots and lots and lots of it to go around. I hope you enjoyed tonight's video, and I'll see you in the next one.